everyone, and welcome back to the tragic and totalitarian Comic Vault. I am Captain Logan, and joining me once again is the Day Ghost. And today, Austin and I are going to finally, I've been meaning to do this forever, Austin. We're finally going to talk about Injustice, Gods Among Us, Year 1. I said Gods Among Us like that because we've just dropped that whole subtitle with Injustice. They're done with that. We'll never see that again.
Yeah, what's weird it even had that in the first place. I remember when that game was announced, I was like, I don't know why it has this unnecessary subtitle.
I could never figure that out either, because it doesn't make it clearer at all that it's a DC thing or anything. Because at first my thought was, well, if you just called it Injustice, they might be like, it's not descriptive enough, people aren't going to know it's a Justice League thing. But it's not like the subtitle has anybody's name in it or anything. It's just, and it sounds kind of pretentious.
Mm-hmm. No,
I
it
always
absolutely
thought
does.
when it first came out, I for some dumb reason, what was this, like 2013?
Yes.
I found myself.
It's around when Arrow starts, like a little bit after.
I found myself expecting people to always use the full subtitle, like the thing wasn't going to be called Injustice. Everybody's going to be, it's Injustice Gods Among Us. So I started shortening it to Injustice Gods, and I did that for about 5 minutes, and then people would call me out on it, and they'd be like, that doesn't mean anything either. That sounds dumb. Don't say that. So I quit doing that. But
you should have just called it Injustice GAU.
So anyway, we got the first volume of 5 Injustice books. Each of these was published originally digital first, and then got singles and trades, of course. And it was published as 5 years. It didn't take 5 years for it to come out. Anytime I'm bringing this up with people and trying to explain the volumes, I always just say like volume 1 and 2, etc. But they were called year 1, year 2 because, of course, that's just how the timeline works. And so this was a prequel, of course, to the video game, which was a really convoluted, interdimensional story. And I use the word story somewhat loosely with that. It was, very much like a Mortal Kombat story. And of course, these were the folks that made the Mortal Kombat games. The way the storytelling was done in the story mode in that game, and the second one too, to some degree. I think it was a little bit more of a straightforward in less convoluted narrative, but also it felt kind of inconsequential and not all that interesting. But it was at least easier to follow what was going on. Those were silly and not especially compelling. And then here comes Tom Taylor, who gives us a prequel to show us how the Superman of this universe became the totalitarian dictator that he is. And it was surprisingly entertaining and thoughtful, and not anything like the storytelling in those games. And I was shocked that I actually, when I first took a look at this, enjoyed it and wanted to read it. Because Austin, when this first came out, it was, first of all, really controversial what happens in that second or third issue, at least in digital, with Superman killing Lois and how that whole thing happens. And it just sounded like really gratuitous and novel to me, and I wasn't really interested in looking at it. And getting into the video games, I finally was like, okay, I'll take a look and see what it's like. And I couldn't believe that I was actually liking it, and I ended up reading through that whole first year. Austin, this is your first foray into this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned that I read it the wrong way, because you read it the totalitarian digital way, while I have the rebellious paperback way.
I read it initially in trade. I think I found a hardcover real inexpensively of that first year at one point, and that's how I read it the first time. But I think the best way to read this is the way it was originally intended, in digital. And I read a lot of things digital these days, so I have something of that bias now, but I especially like to read this kind of stuff that way because the formatting is for the size of a tablet. So there's no scrolling you have to do, there's no zooming you have to do, issue, you flip it sideways, and that's what it's formatted for. In trade, they take two of those pages and put them on top of each other, and so it can be somewhat awkward sometimes going from scene to scene because it'll feel kind of jarring that we'll just randomly go into a new scene with no page break or anything, because the page break was over that initial like usually 3-panel layout. And so that's how I try to read digital first most of the time now.
Hmm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the old. They had like James Bond comics where they did like each book as a comic, but there were comic strips initially. So when you got them in trade, it was just like, here's the one strip, here's the next strip, and like each like every single like segment ends on like a cliffhanger, but it's all one page. It's just very strange to read like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is always weird to read comic strips in trade like that. It has that a little bit because some of these, especially the interlude stories, are to at least to some degree complete stories told in the single issue format for a digital, not for even the single releases of these month to month. So you'll have things like the issue where Flash is running down the 90-mile stretch, and the issue with Superman and the kid with the bicycle. Those were originally in digital published as one single issue. It's weird to get a single issue in print and have that as part of the whole thing, because those were intentional standalone things on their own. So in a weird way, the singles for digital first end up also being like trades, just like small trades that have 2 or 3 issues in them.
Yeah, because I wasn't thinking about it in the moment, like in that it, was like a smaller issue, but it was like, why did we just tell this one story, and then now we're on to a completely different story in this issue? That makes so
Yeah,
much more sense.
it's because they're basically traded. Batman Beyond was like that too. When you got the single issues of Adam Beecham's Batman Beyond, which was coming out around the same time, you'd get an issue of Batman, and by issue I mean they're like, I don't know, they would equate to like 8 or 9 pages, maybe a little less. But in this format, it's 20-21 pages, just like a regular comic. But of course, they read really fast because it's only half a page in a comic page, right? I promise I won't spend the whole time talking about format.
No,
And
this is a review of the format. We're not going to talk about the book, it's just the format.
next time, part 2, the story of Injustice: Gods Among Us, Year 1.
Well, no. So this is a collection of parts. So technically, we had part 1, the title, and then part 2, the format.
You're watching it traded later in a single issue.
Exactly.
But anyway, what was I talking about?
The format.
Well, yes, that's as far as I remember right now.
Something about the format. Yeah, I don't remember now.
Thanks, Austin. You threw me off. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry.
I know what I was saying. So, Batman Beyond was published like this. You'd have an issue of in the singles when they'd come out. You'd have the digital first issue of Batman Beyond, and then Superman Beyond, which was published at the same time, and then Justice League Beyond. And I've talked about this before, but I quit reading those in print singles because you'd get what felt like a third of an issue of a story for each of those. So like if it's one ongoing story and it all gets traded, you can kind of tell that you're not reading it in the format it was intended, but at least it's a story that keeps moving forward linearly and it's the same story. But reading 3 different books in that format was obnoxious.
Yeah, it sounds like the old school like Marvel, like Tales to Astonish or like Strange Tales, like any of those kinds of issues, except if you added a third book into it, and you have modern comic book storytelling where it's just all stretched out across several issues.
Or the way annuals are sometimes done, where you'll
Hmm.
have, 3 or 4 stories in one annual, or the way a lot of kids' books are done, where there are just several really short stories, inside of
Okay,
an
yeah.
all ages comic.
Yeah, I've never read any of those, but that makes sense.
But anyway, so I wish that somehow these could be traded in the original format, where it would basically look like, a flip book size or something, and maybe be, a little thicker than you're used to, but where you would just, only have that half a page and read it like it was intended. And now that I've done it this way with these things, I don't think I would want to go back. And I own all these, by the way, in singles, and I don't know that I'll ever crack them open and read them like that again.
Yeah, once you've seen like how it's supposed to be, why would you go back?
But anyway, so if we try to refer to anything while we're talking about this in the issue that it happens, you and I are going to be talking about completely different issue numbers, because I read this in 36 short issues. I also
Mhm.
think that I don't know that it would actually read faster, one way or the other, but I wonder if it doesn't sort of feel like you're moving at a quicker clip doing it the way I did it.
Yeah, maybe with
Because
like
you're
so
just
many
constantly
kind of
flipping
yeah.
pages because they're so short.
Yeah, I could see that, definitely. And it definitely feels like you're getting farther with 36 issues as opposed to 13 like I had.
So anyway, we spent like 10 minutes on format.
Bye, everybody.
Part two next time. Let's go ahead and get into the story a little bit. Well, actually, I think it might be fun to start with art with this, because that's probably the biggest detriment to this whole thing. And we recently talked about Deceased, which Austin got to read before Injustice, and everybody that saw that knows how we feel about Tom Taylor's writing now. And so, if you're like me, you'll have a somewhat similar reaction to this. But let's talk a little bit about the artwork. It gets pretty jarring from issue to issue quite a bit. And I bet it was even, again, going back to format, even worse for you looking at it in singles, where in one issue it would change sometimes two, if not three times.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it was very strange, and the art is completely all over the place. Some of the art in this book is terrible.
It was it's kind of like reading No Man's Land in a microcosm.
Oh yeah, is it like that too? That's one of
Yeah.
the big Batman stories I haven't read.
Well, and of course, a lot of stuff that was, again, we're still sort of talking about format. A lot of stuff that's a big event that goes across different books is going to have that. If you have,
Of
three or
course,
four
yeah.
different titles, you've got 3 or 4 different artists, not to mention writers, and so when you trade all of that, when it's a, ongoing story that is jumping between books, there's no way around it. You're gonna have some jarring art shifts. Some things are worse than others. I never felt it at all, even though some of the art's not great. I never felt that big jarring art switch reading Death of Superman, Reign of the Superman, but absolutely, or even Nightfall. But
I
it's
never had that with Nightfall,
but it's
yeah.
awful with No Man's Land, because and it's a lot like this, because there's a lot of really cartoony stuff, really ultra sketchy stuff. There are some issues in both No Man's Land and this, and I feel horrible saying this, and I'm not going to call out any artists by name when I say this. There are a couple of artists here where I don't know how they're getting work in comics. I just don't even understand who took a look at that and said, yeah, they're publishable. Where it's like, no, you need to go back to art school. Where there can be a fine line, I guess, between stylistic and not functional, and I think we are walking that line in a couple of places with this book.
Yeah, no, specifically, you sent me today the one panel, Batman punching, like a punching bag, which is like a really famous panel that I knew before then and completely forgot about until, we read this book. And that panel it's something.
He's got just these massive teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
It
I
looks like
don't,
a mistake, and it's not like. I guess the problem with some of the art in this is exaggeration, right?
Hmm.
And some of it looks really early 2000s. You had this kind of overall uh, house style in the early 2000s at DC that I think was kind of problematic, where everything was just really ultra heightened and strange looking, and people just looked like amorphous blobs a lot of the time. That was during that period where, especially in Jeff Loeb stuff, but I think really everywhere, Superman just constantly was squinting, like his eyes were always closed. It was that period. He doesn't do that
Okay, yeah.
here, but this reminded me of that period.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
Was that a bunch of workman writers that have, or art? This could sound so mean. Was that a bunch of workman artists in the early 2000s that have not worked since then? And when we got to some of this digital first stuff, they were just, seeing who was around that was willing to draw some of this stuff.
Well, I'm convinced with this book it was it's a video game tie-in. Who really cares? Like, we don't need to put one of our big artists on it. Whatever, just do it.
So let me ask you two questions. First of all, was there any art in this that you actually appreciated, or was it serviceable at best when it was okay?
Um, yeah, I remember. I think there's an issue with Shazam that I remember like looking all right. This Lobo issue doesn't look too bad either. It
Oh,
looks.
the annual?
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, and it's completely throwaway and did not need to be
It's
included.
it's completely throwaway. It's like I guess it's just a Lobo story now.
I get the sense that for whatever reason, and I was doubling down on this reading Deceased, by the way. We're gonna jump all over the place talking about this. I felt like I feel like for whatever reason, Tom Taylor latched on to this idea he had with throwing Green Arrow and Harley Quinn together and just could not get enough of that. And he did not win me over on that pairing.
Hmm.
Like he just seems almost obsessed with that. He thinks it's hilarious for some reason. If I never see another joke about a fake mustache, it will be too soon.
It keeps happening.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't funny the first time. It was really not funny the seventh time.
Yeah, yeah, when that happened, I was like, "Oh, okay." And
I think he gets better with some of the levity in Deceased, where he strikes a better balance and the cringy jokes aren't as cringy. But I think going into Deceased, I was remembering some things like the mustache joke, and when you get that scene in that book where Green Arrow, it's always with Green Arrow with him. I I guess it's because he knows that Oliver Queen is supposed to be a more jovial, jokey character than he is in the Arrow TV show, and I think he's trying to help remind everybody who that character is supposed to be, which is a laudable goal. But like you had that scene in that where he and Black Canary are singing by the fire, and that whole thing was we talked about that like that was something of a cringy scene, and then I went back to this again and I was like, oh, that doesn't hold a candle to a couple of the gags in this, and that's not to say that it's never funny and the humor never works. Like I appreciate that again, like Deceased, he's able to be as lighthearted as he is in places and doesn't take himself too seriously, and remembers that he's writing in comics, in superhero comics. But boy, there are a couple things that just stick out like a sore thumb like that.
yeah, no, this book did not make me love Harley Quinn.
He had that and then he had that joke, and then he couldn't stop making the Arrow Cave joke, which is a decent joke the first time it comes up, where she says, oh, you should call it the Quiver, and he's like, that's actually better. And then he just keeps doubling down later on, like, I'm never gonna call it anything other than the Arrow Cave, and I'm like, can we stop talking about this? It's not funny
Hmm.
anymore. Like,
Yeah, the first time it happened, I was like, it is kind of like a better name. Like looking back at it, that's what they should have called it instead of the Arrow Cave. And then it keeps coming back, and it was like, okay, this isn't funny anymore. You can stop. It was my reaction to the Kite Man thing in Tom King Batman.
That is this to the nth degree, though, because it's like 105 issues of hell yeah. That's not fair. I just mean whenever he shows up. It's not like he's in all of that, but
No, but like every time I see Kite Man in anything now, I like cringe because I'm like, it's coming. I know it's coming.
the Harley Quinn TV show makes fun of that real hard.
Oh yeah. Even like I saw an episode of that the other day and Kite Man was in it. I don't think he said it, but the second he showed up, I was like, oh God. Oh no, it's Kite Man. No.
Yeah. The other one that really took me out was that thing with Ares and the joke about the god of ponies.
Yeah, what was that?
I don't know. I mean, the issue ends with him going, ponies.
Yeah, which is funnier to describe, but like in the moment, it's like,
That was
what
a
is
choice.
this?
That's a place where
Mhm.
the levity takes over too much. And I feel like he's maybe a little bit too influenced by CW humor. Because
Oh, yeah.
you can see some of that influence, and you can see him like directly responding to some of the things that Arrow was doing right then. I want to say Arrowverse, but I don't even think we were to Flash yet, or maybe Flash had just started when he was writing this.
Um, I don't know. It's in like the first 2 years
Hmm.
of Arrow because they had that skin. I don't know if you remember for the first Injustice,
Yes, I
where they
know.
brought Stephen Amell, and it's still like the makeup look, like it's like early Arrow.
It's pretty early, yeah. Well, and they had Flash in there too. Um,
Oh,
did
they had a Flash
did they not do
CW
a Flash
skin?
skin? I seem to recall they're doing a couple of different Arrowverse skins. I think they had an Arrow and a Flash skin, but maybe
Yeah,
I'm
it's been so long, I don't remember super well. There was definitely different skins for like different movies.
yeah. It's weird. I feel simultaneously like this this feels as old as it is, and also it's crazy that it's as old as it is, right? Because in some ways this is still really super modern because we can't get away from evil Superman. There's some things that this is doing that feels like every week something's coming out that's either influenced by this or doing the same stuff this is, because we're kind of still in that mode, right? And there's other stuff where it's like, oh yeah, this was circa this period where people still took the CW superhero shows more seriously, and you can see the influences of certain things that are happening in comics. You can see New 52 all over this, of course. You've got the armored look that everybody has to have, that video game had, and that feels very New 52 inspired. And just certain character choices you'd make back then that maybe you wouldn't make now. So it was really interesting, kind of jumping back in time with this, because to me it doesn't feel like it's been that long, and then in certain ways it's been forever.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can definitely understand that because reading it, like it definitely does feel like something that could have come out like this week.
Yeah, it's like, how is it 7 or 8 years old?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that game's almost a decade old.
Yeah,
That's
it's
insane.
wild. But then at the same time, you look at certain things, like, I don't know, like how Damien's characterized and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I don't know that we would do it that way now.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah,
say
no, that makes
after
sense.
the include. I apologize. I want to say after the inclusion of John Kent, you wouldn't have Damien react the way he does here, or even necessarily be on the same side he's on. I'm not totally sure that he goes that way.
Yeah, it's definitely that kind of like early Damien, where it's more tied to like the League of Assassins stuff, where yeah, you don't have that kind of connection he does with Superman's son like you did in Deceased.
Yeah, and of course, it's really interesting comparing some of the same characters that he uses in this in Deceased. Like when I was reading that, I was really preoccupied by all the characters that he seems to like to go back to, and that maybe he was trying to experiment with different ways of writing them, and maybe he had grown as a writer to some degree, and so he was trying some different things out. Like, I really want to see Tom Taylor continue doing a lot of Elseworlds type books. I feel like that's where he really lives, is just
Mm.
taking a really classic standard DC universe and throwing all the pieces out of the box and doing something crazy with it. And it doesn't have to be dystopian and post-apocalyptic every time, but I wish we would bring back Elseworlds as like a line and let Tom Taylor do some of them and sort of show run that whole thing. Because I feel like he's really carved out a niche for himself as the Elseworlds guy.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Reading this, I think I really appreciate like his take on Batman. I feel like it's kind of fresh in the sense that, the last big Batman thing I read was King, and so much of King's Batman run is that like, well, it's because he's Batman, like he can kind of do anything. And then you get to this and DC's, like DC's takes him out right away.
Yeah.
And then in this, it's like, Batman's not like this big like threat to Superman really. Like he's struggling through the entire book, even with the little that he's actually doing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, things are difficult for him, and he is one step ahead a lot, but he's got a lot of failures here, and
Mhm.
you can see how he gets to everything he does, and he doesn't seem godlike, and it's important that he's not godlike with that. With obviously the contrast between him and Superman, especially because the idea seems to be to Tom Taylor, if Superman becomes the despot, Batman Batman's going to do one of two things. He's either going to like, because I could see you sort of writing the other side of this. He's either going to go, yeah, I agree with Superman because that's what I would do if it were me, and Batman talks about that. He's like, if I had your powers, I can't disagree with you, Superman. I would probably do what you're doing, but you're supposed to be the best of us. You're better than I am. And so he goes this other direction where he basically has to try to take Superman's place in a world where Superman is convincing a lot of people that what he's doing is right. And so one of the reasons the Batman has to struggle so hard is because a lot of the world isn't with him at all. And that's a really interesting kind of scary place for Batman to be. So Superman becomes kind of this in a not Joker way foil for Batman, where, and obviously we've done the Batman versus Superman thing a lot, and this is 2 or 3 years before BVS even.
Hmm.
And I also think that there's some influence with BVS with this. Like, I wonder if BVS turns into what it does if Injustice never happens. I had that thought a lot when that came out. But
No, I do, yeah.
this makes the case that if Superman could somehow be driven over the edge to where he feels the need to take over, and become the dictator, that he is a even more scary, like, arch nemesis for Batman than even Joker is. And so when that whole thing happens, Batman has to try to become Superman. And so he can't have, to go back to your original point, he can't be the godlike I'm Batman thing, because if he is, there's no contrast with Superman, and you don't have much of a conflict. It'd be too easy.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and nothing spells that out more than their kind of confrontation at the end of this book, where we take that kind of Dark Knight Returns scene and we flip it on its head.
To the point where Batman even says, like, well, I could put on the big mech suit thing, but I'm not going to fight you, Clark.
Well, yeah, in like the end of Dark Knight Returns, he's got like his foot on Superman's throat, and he's like, "I want you to remember that, like, I'm the man who beat you." And in this book, Superman's like holding Batman's broken body, and Batman's like, "I want you to remember that, like, you had to resort to torture."
Oh, good call. Yeah, I didn't even think of the story parallel there. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, like they're very similar lines.
So we talked when we did Deceased about how Tom Taylor has gone on record to say that he actually doesn't like this idea and that it was an assignment. And I said there that I thought he was the perfect, or a guy like him anyway, is the perfect guy to write a thing like this because he doesn't believe in it. And of course, that could be a bad thing. You could have somebody that's so not into this idea that they kind of sabotage it. He doesn't do that. He's really thoughtful about it. He goes, I'm going to prove once again why Superman and his values work and are important and should be there by turning him into something he's not, because that's what this book's about. That's what that video game's about. I'm stuck doing that. I have to do that. So he makes Superman the exception that proves the rule of traditional Superman.
Hmm. Yeah, and even just like beyond Superman, one of the best things he does is that the book just kind of, or the game just kind of goes like, this is Superman's side. They all kind of, they're just with Superman. While this like, each character has their own opinion and stance on everything that's happening around them. It's not just like that kind of He-Man thing where, oh, these are the bad people. They're on the bad side.
And it's not the Justice Lords thing, right? Where we just go, here's this conceit, here's this cool novelty. If you think it's cool, because I know a lot of people at this point are really sick of evil Superman, and I am too, because for so long we've not really been allowed to have a traditional Superman in a lot of things, because it's like the world moved on from that, and the world's too cynical for us to believe that anybody could really be that way. And I'm in the camp of, no, it's more important that we keep that character's value, set of values intact that it ever has been. And also, it's just nice to have some story variety. It's not fun if Star Trek only goes to the mirror universe. In exactly the same way, it's not fun if Superman is only ever like evil heat beams in his eyes all the time, constantly. And so anyway, it's just really refreshing that you've got a guy who goes, this is a bad idea. How could it work if it has to work? And so he's remarkably thoughtful about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of steps. It's not just kind of like, well, now he's evil, which is, how the game kind of paints it out to be.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's just that kind of Justice Lord's conceit of, well, in this universe they went bad, or they became villains instead of heroes in the first place, or they masquerade as heroes and they kind of rule with an iron fist, but what they're doing is not remotely heroic. And it's so nice that we start from a real honest to God Superman place. Like, this isn't a world where Superman was always like this, and you get to see basically the Superman, for all intents and purposes, that you grew up with turn into that.
hmm Yeah, and it's not night and day. Like, it's just he goes like this little bit too far, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and it like just throughout the book. And then I'm assuming, because I don't know if you had this, because I know you've read this a few times, and you haven't read anything else outside of this one, right?
So I started the second year at one point. I read like maybe 3 or 4 issues into that, not digital issues, but like trade issues. But I don't remember anything about that now. So yeah, I've not been much farther at all. I kept rereading this, by the way, because I kept meaning to review it, and I hadn't gotten around to it. And so I'd read it, and then weeks would go by, and I go, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to read this again to review it. And then I would do that again, and then not get around to reviewing it. So yes, I've read this first year a bunch of times, and now I'm sort of worried that I like this volume. I mean, I've got issues with this. We'll talk about it, but I enjoy reading this so much. I'm kind of worried that the rest of it's going to be a letdown, because obviously it ends on a cliffhanger, and obviously it's a prequel for where the despotic Superman will get to. So we haven't even really seen him in his, you know, like the regime Superman, that whole thing. But it's a pretty good standalone piece. Like I don't really feel like I need any more of this. I'm interested to see where it goes. But I I wonder if after I've read all of it, I won't still find myself going back and just rereading this one a bunch of times.
Yeah, no, for sure. But today I was thinking about just like in comparison to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where you're kind of seeing like the build up to this kind of post-apocalyptic world. And I was thinking because by the end of this book, you have Superman, bringing in his military and stuff. And so it's like it's maybe like if that movie ended where you could kind of see the trappings of the first movie already there.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know how exactly like this will, get pulled out to 5 books, so that's going to be interesting.
I
Um,
had that question too. I was like, does this premise have legs? Like, do you really want to see uh the Iron Fists? I shouldn't say Iron Fist. The ruling with an Iron Fist Superman
Immortal Iron
for
Fist.
for 5 years?
Yeah, and there's certain things, like Batman kind of gets taken out at the end of this book, which is, I think, so that we can have Superman kind of, build more towards that without Batman kind of being there and without that question of, okay, but why doesn't Superman just kill him at this point? We don't have to worry about that as much book to book. Like, I'm assuming he's probably not going to have as much of an impact in volume 2, but I
Yeah,
mean, we'll
I'm
see,
not
I
sure. We haven't
guess.
read it yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm planning on going
Just
through all of
that
this.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely enjoyed this book, so I'm excited to see what happens next.
So, for you, Austin, how much of the enjoyment of this book is like honest to God compelling storytelling, and how much of it is the kind of commercial novelty of this premise? Because for me, um, it's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. Like there's a weird perverse pleasure I find myself getting out of some of the stuff that's turned on its head, and the perversions and stuff where it's like, this is messed up and I shouldn't be enjoying this. But like the stuff that you would think would be handled really gratuitously, that I find myself enjoying on a gratuitous level, but I think more so because it's handled with kid gloves as much as it is. Like when you get to the end of this and Superman basically becomes Bane and breaks Batman's back, there's a part of me that just lives for that kind of stuff. And like again, it seems like really novel and I don't want to say plot twisty, but just but I don't know, like, fans are supposed to eat this up with a spoon because it's Superman, dude. But like, it totally plays for me.
Yeah, for sure. In that scene, I was more so like, well, it's funny that Superman would break his back in the exact same way because he's Superman. You'd think he could put his hand there and break his back.
That's true. Yeah, he was being dramatic for our benefit, if not Batman's.
Yeah, exactly. And then
At
you
least
have
at
to
no
follow
point
that
did
up
he
with
feel
like
the need to say, "I'm going to break your damn back." I didn't have to read that a
that'll
hundred
be in
thousand
volume
times.
2.
Oh, okay.
All day I was like, I can't wait. I'm gonna make that joke when we get there.
Oh, sorry, I took it from you.
No, it's all good. One of us had to say it. We'll say it 16 times though throughout this video, so it'll be good. Yeah, no, and then you have to follow that scene up with like Alfred beating up Superman. Like, there's definitely, some fan servicey stuff going on.
Yeah, like, did that stuff play for you, or were you able to kind of just stomach it or ignore it because the story was told well enough?
Yeah, like I don't know, it's just kind of fun. Like, it's not something where I'm like, this is, deep storytelling. Like, I'm not going into this looking to see like Goodfellas or something like that. Like, yeah, that's fine. It's like a fun moment. Hmm.
Yeah, because I don't know. A lot of the time with stuff like that, I find myself either just living with it because I'm liking the storytelling, the characters well enough, or that's just the stuff that you're there for, kind of like Batman Ninja Turtles. And here I thought the balance was really good, where like I was actually into some of the character stuff. And you're right, like it's obviously not the deepest thing in the world, and it is really super commercial, and it's supposed to be that.
Hmm. No, that's what it is. I don't think it's trying to lie to you by,
Yeah,
with that. Yeah, no, there's definitely some really good character moments. Tom Taylor definitely elevates this material, and like we said, definitely more so than the games.
and he gets. Uh, Particularly Superman and Batman in a way that I think is fundamental for making this premise remotely work because it shouldn't.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's got a really good handle on both of them. I think between this and Deceased, I don't think he's a Wonder Woman fan. Like that would
I
just be
don't
like a
either.
guess off the top of my head.
Hmm.
Because Wonder Woman, and it's in the games too, is just like a terrible person.
Yeah, but again, how much
And
of that is
then,
just what he was stuck with?
well, and that's why like with Deceased, because she's like barely in that book, and there's some of that
And
in
she
it
gets
too,
taken
where
out at
she's
the
just
end
kind of
too.
like,
He kills off
yeah.
the whole Trinity in that.
Hmm. Yeah, and she's the only one where they don't kind of connect it with their like ward. It's like, throw her out.
I thematically I like the kind of ruthless, brutal warrior thing in this because she's a midpoint between Batman and Superman. But I did find myself thinking, you are throwing Wonder Woman under the bus a little bit. Like if I were a big Wonder Woman fan, I probably wouldn't appreciate that characterization as much as I am being the big Batman Superman guy I am,
Hmm.
and she's a character that's been handled in 115 different ways and not in the
Yeah.
way that Batman is. I probably talked about this before, but I'm always talking about how there are a bazillion different valid ways to handle Batman. And Superman, there's kind of, in my mind, like one great take for the most part, right? Wonder Woman has been everything under the sun. I would argue that Wonder Woman has been both Batman and Superman, like idealistically and in the way she operates and stuff. Like even in the I would say even in the DCEU movies, she sometimes is Superman and sometimes Batman.
Hmm. Even her powers are inconsistent. Nobody knows what's going on
All
with
over the
Wonder
place.
Woman.
Yeah, every time somebody new comes in and takes over Wonder Woman, she's a totally different character. So she's this, and I want to say blank slate, but she probably shouldn't be. Like, I feel like there is a definitive take on that character, and I don't know for sure which one it should be. And maybe that's I don't know. Maybe everybody has their own sense of what that definitive take should be. But like, I want Wonder Woman to be closer to Superman than
The
than
same with
she is to
me, yeah.
Batman. Like I want, and I know I like the Wonder Woman movie more than you do, but I like Patty Jenkins' kind of Reeve take with her, where her belief system and the idealistic way she looks at the world and everything is a lot closer to that, but she's also a warrior and is willing to kill when she thinks she has to because she was raised that way and it's war and stuff. I feel like in this, he tries to have his cake and eat it too, and he can't entirely decide what she wants, right? Because we talk a lot about how she wants peace and she uses violence as a last resort, and she would rather solve problems by talking them out as much as possible. At the same time as we're saying she revels in the violence.
Yeah, and it's got this weird thing where other characters talk about her as more of like a Superman-ish Wonder Woman, like what we
A little
both would
more
want from that
altruistic.
character. Yeah, where they're like, "Oh, look how far you've gone." But unlike Superman, we don't really get that before a point. It's just like Wonder Woman walks in, sees Superman kill Joker, and is like, "Sweet, I don't
Yeah,
have to pretend anymore."
she said, I've been waiting for you to take over the world, essentially.
Yeah,
You know, and I'm
no,
sure at
she's
some
just
point even she'll
crazy.
decide that he's going too far.
I don't know. I think she's just gonna be like, "Keep going."
But like I said, I kind of like the idea anyway on paper of that midpoint where you have the where like she is the god who accepts her godhood, and Superman is the god who tries to be to be man, and then ultimately in this tragically fails and ends up embracing that godhood in a terrible way. And then you have Batman, who is the man who thinks he has to be a god, and then realizes how important his humanity is because of the insane direction Superman ends up being. So I think it's easier to appreciate the contrast in uh, who this Batman and Superman each end up becoming, because you have her in the middle, but then she ends up reading more like a plot device than a character,
Well, yeah, she's more of
or like
like
a
the devil
thematic
on.
device.
Yeah, and she's more of like the devil on Superman's shoulder than anything else. Like that's basically her role. She's just there to be like, Superman, go this way. This is what we want to do. Don't listen to the other people.
Yeah, that's true. And
Hmm.
and you're right. We don't gradually get her to that place like we do Superman, so it reads like in. I think the problem is that you have such a traditional initial take with Superman and Batman that it reads like that's what it's supposed to be for Wonder Woman, but I'm skeptical of it. Where it's like in the in the normal, I keep saying traditional, in the regular, you know, like classic DC universe that we all know and love, if Superman lost himself and decided that it was more important to save people than to allow them to have freedom, and he just took over, Wonder Woman would be the facilitator that allowed that to happen. It doesn't read like anything happens to change her mind to get there. She was always that way.
Hmm. You know, like she said, she was waiting for it. It's like the Punisher waiting for his family to die. It's just an
Yeah.
excuse to go that way.
And there is kind of a take there, I guess.
Hmm.
I because again, I like the idea that she was born a god, and that's all she knew for the longest time. So she's, you know, so she thinks it's important for regular lowly human beings to have not just those role models, but people making decisions for them. But he's a little bit inconsistent about it because he's trying so hard to still make her kind of look like she came from a heroic place. So yeah, I don't know. The more we're talking about it, I think she's kind of the weak, to some degree, the weak link. Um,
Hmm.
in the I don't know, character wise.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think for me, and like I said, it's not just this book. I think it's just this series in general, like Injustice, because it's in the games too. Their take on Wonder Woman, I think, is just kind of not my bag. Like it's just kind of, hmm uh, I don't know. Injustice 3 should just be Batman versus Wonder Woman because she's the crazy one.
Wait a minute, you were the power behind the throne the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Everybody talks about evil Superman. No one talks about evil Wonder Woman.
Um, One of the weirdest things that while we're in criticism territory that I've never been able to fully reconcile is Superman's relationship in this with Lex Luthor. I don't understand it. Lex is not in the book for the longest time. You almost forget about him, and like Metropolis. And I like this. Metropolis is destroyed. Nobody asks where is Lex Luthor, and then eventually we finally find him like hiding in a bunker. I forget where exactly he is, but there was some random female speedster that he
Oh,
had
it's under
hired
Metropolis. Yeah.
to get him out of Metropolis if there was ever a like dystopian level or a apocalyptic level event. And then she gets caught in the destruction and she dies, and I don't know who that was supposed to be. It's just some female Flash. And like I don't know if that was supposed to be a character, but she's just wearing this not great looking armored Flash suit. Flash's suit never looks good in armor. I hate it.
It's awful. He's the one character that should be wearing tights.
But
It's
anyway,
more realistic.
so they find Lex Luthor, and Superman is getting, already closer and closer to, popping and becoming the dictator, and he and Lex embrace like long lost best friends, and then we find out that they are best friends,
Hmm.
and I don't. It's the only thing in this book that reads like there was already some kind of a diverging point if you looked at this as a what if story, because pretty much everything else there's no weird uh like uh universe building ideas in the first place in this, except for that everything else is pretty, standard stuff.
That has to be because of the game, like the something he was stuck with. Because that is in
I
the
don't
game
I
that
don't
Lex
remember
Luthor
that
was.
now. It's just been so long since I played through the story mode.
Yeah, in the game, Lex was never a villain. He was always Superman's best friend, and
Oh, okay.
he like helps Batman at one point, and it's like this big thing where Superman's like, how could Lex Luthor try to hurt me?
Well, that's unfortunate because he's standard typical Lex Luthor. Like he's just as much of a mastermind, and he's just as conniving and as he's ever been. And I like the way Tom Taylor writes him, but I don't understand how the altruistic, kind of more naive Superman at the beginning of this would be palling around with him, because it's really, and I mean, I say naive, maybe that's the problem, but I mean, it's really obvious um, where his motivations lie.
Mhm. Yeah, no, he is written more like just Lex Luthor in general. It's kind of like DC. It's not as far where he's like just egging people on while he's with the heroes, but like there, you can tell that he's also, not the greatest guy,
Well, what I
at
wanted to
least with them.
know was what Superman would have thought of Lex's world-saving solution before he went darker.
Hmm.
Like, they would have to have some interpersonal conflict as friends, because they come at everything from completely different places, different sides. Um, so, like, I didn't understand what that relationship was before, because Lex's whole plan in this is, and Superman goes along with it with no questions whatsoever. And I buy it at the point where he's at, where he's like already almost murdered some people, and he's like, well, in order to hang on to the peace that we're creating, we have to create more metahumans, essentially. And so we're going to basically build an army of super soldiers with these pills that Lex has developed. And Superman's totally fine with that. If he had pitched that at the beginning of the book, what would Superman have said? Like, what kinds of things was Lex doing before all of this?
Well, yeah, and Superman at one point says that Lex was working on those pills like for years, so I
Oh yeah, I forgot
assume
about
he
that. And he
knew
was
about
fine with it.
it. I don't know.
That's
And if
weird.
Lex is a good guy, like it's weird in
Seems
general that
against his principles to me.
hmm when it's weird in general if Lex is like a good guy in this, but he also has like a speedster to like take him into a bunker, but also isn't allowed to get in the bunker with him.
Yeah, like he's putting himself completely first, and Superman seems totally fine with that.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have to imagine that's probably he was stuck with stuff from that game.
Yeah, I wish he could have somehow finessed it more where I would have bought that relationship, because that really took me out. I did not understand what was
Hmm.
going on there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even when they brought in the pill, it's like, oh, we gotta introduce the thing that allows people to fight each other in the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Did you
Hmm.
find yourself taken out a lot with stuff where you're like, oh, that's just because of the video game, and like shoving in characters that are playable in that game? Because there's a
Uh,
little of that.
Not like a ton for me. Like there's certain things like when the pills came up, I was like, oh, of course, that's like a big part of that game was they need some way to justify why these characters can fight each other. Same with the Mortal Kombat one, like versus DC. One of the biggest ones, though, oddly enough, is that Batman's costume throughout this book is the alternate universe Batman that like comes into the Injustice world. And I thought that was kind of weird and like took me out a little bit because it's like, well, that's not this universe's Batman. That's a little strange.
Okay,
Um,
wait, what are we talking about?
so Batman's costume that he wears in this book, like the like armored one,
Yeah.
that is like the good universe Batman in the game. The one that's in the Injustice universe has a completely different costume. So I
Oh,
don't
I
know if
didn't remember that.
eventually he'll get that, but I just thought that was strange reading it, where I was like, ah, it's weird.
Well, and I found myself wondering what led to everybody being all armored in, again, what initially reads like a really traditional DC universe, because it kind of makes sense if everybody's starting to get a little bit more cynical, uh, but that isn't happening until Superman accidentally kills Lois thinking that she's Doomsday. And so we get that flashback with Superman and the kid with bicycle, where he's wearing a standard, old school Superman costume. And I'm like, why did Superman later put armor on? At least New 52, everybody's always had the armor costumes. There's not, as far as I understand it, there's not a period early on where they weren't armored. That's just the look of that world. So it's really weird that there's not any kind of story reason for why they start doing that later.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because that is just like a traditional Superman costume, isn't it? I didn't really think about that in the moment, but that
Well,
is really weird.
and I don't think I would have I wouldn't have questioned it if we never saw an example of just regular tights in this, because before that it just reads, okay, this is what they wear in the game, so that's
Yeah,
all it is.
exactly. Hmm.
But
Yeah,
once
it's just
you
stuck with that.
once you introduce old school, and maybe I'm reading too far into this, but once you introduce old school tights, I find myself going, okay, the only reason that you would like escalate to armor is because they're starting to look at the world differently.
Hmm. Well, and now that you're saying that, like Harley's design, I don't think is her design in that game.
I think she maybe gets it later, because I seem to
Oh,
recall
okay.
some later issues from another series, because I've read a little bit of Injustice 2, and I think I might even have read an issue or two of Year Zero. I can't remember, but I think she's got maybe something closer to the game outfits there.
Hmm. But in terms of like the characters that they use, like you said with like the playable character thing,
Yeah,
like I am just kind of used to like that Mortal Kombat style of storytelling. But at the same time, like I'm kind of surprised that he was allowed to expand more and
I
go to
was too.
characters outside of that. Because we get a lot of that, like
And there's some
back.
major players
Hmm.
that aren't characters that are in the game, like the Atom. I don't like.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like Huntress and Batwoman are on Batman's team.
Yeah, and it's weird seeing some of those Injustice type costumes on characters that were never playable.
Mm. Yeah, and even I'm trying to think. I don't think Black Canary's in the first game, and she's a big part of
She's
this
not.
book. Yeah,
I always kind of wondered if maybe her involvement in this series had something to do with why she was picked for the second game,
no, that could be. Yeah.
because she's such a major player in this. Um, but alternatively, there are some, especially DLC characters that have not shown up yet that I'm finding myself wondering if they will. Like the character that most took me out, where I'm like, the only reason we did a story with this character is because they threw him in that first game, is Lobo
He's the first DLC
in that
character.
annual
Yeah,
that we were talking about. But we haven't seen Zod yet. Weirdly, Batwoman's in there, but never Batgirl.
that is weird.
And
Yeah.
I wonder if she'll, for some reason, show up later. But you'd think she would have popped in somewhere. It's really strange that like Nightwing dies and you never see Barbara Gordon anywhere.
Hmm. Yeah,
I don't
no,
know what their
that is
relationship is
weird.
in this whole thing. And what And you even have Gordon in this book, but you've not seen Barbara. And I wouldn't have questioned it if it weren't for the fact that she's in that first game.
Mhm.
She was
Yeah,
one of my mains. I played with her all the time.
she's one of the first DLC characters too, like second or third, I
See, I don't know
think.
the order that they came out because I didn't play with any of the DLC until the Game of the Year edition. So
Oh yeah, no, of course. But I'm trying to remember because I had like the game initially first. I think it was like Lobo's Batgirl maybe. But yeah, like she's one of the first ones, so it is surprising she's not there. And I mean, I'm sure they had that all planned even, when the game was being developed in the first place.
we're getting off the beaten path a little bit, but Martian Manhunter was always weird to me with that game because he was DLC if memory serves.
Oh, actually, he might have been the one of the. I don't know. He was there. There's a bunch of DLC
So
characters.
you're so you're playing that game when it first comes out, and you've got Martian Manhunter in the background in the I think there's a satellite stage.
Yeah, it's on the Watchtower. Yeah, and he's in the background.
Yeah, and he's in the background, and then you get to play as Martian Manhunter, and I can't remember if he's still in the background or if they take him out when
He
you play as
is.
him, but
It's same with the Fortress of Solitude. It has Darkseid and not Darkseid, Doomsday in the background, and then you can play as Doomsday, and he's still there. But in the story mode, you fight him there, and they take him out of the background, so it's clearly something that they can change. But they
so
didn't just program it into the game normally.
so remind me, is the exact impetus for Superman becoming the despot uh, in that game as it is here, or did Tom Taylor come up with some of that? Like the Joker coming up with a way to make Superman murder Lois and thinking it's Doomsday, because I can't remember.
Yeah, no, that is how that story starts.
Okay.
It's the exact same where it's like the nuke that goes off if she dies, and Superman thinks she's dark. Or I keep saying dark side, Doomsday, and then like kills her.
Darkseid is
They
in
don't.
this for 5 seconds.
Yeah, he just shows up. I was like, oh, here's Darkseid, I guess.
Put a pin in that because I want to ask you a question about that whole thing. But
Yeah,
if that wasn't in the story mode in the game, this would read like we made him think it was Doomsday just to have a shot of Doomsday in this because he's a playable character in that. Which might be why they made it Doomsday in the game, where it's like, how else do you put Doomsday in here? We'll just have it be a hallucination. Now,
yeah,
don't get me wrong, I like that choice because I feel like, and I agree with Tom Taylor. I don't. I have fundamental issues with the idea that that you could do anything to Superman that would make him go this far. Although, I don't know. I guess I'm of two minds about it because I think in real life believe that everybody has a breaking point to some degree. So like I guess he made me buy it as well as anybody could, but like the idea that uh it would have to be Lois and it would have to be her pregnant with his child. I like that it isn't just Lois dies and he snaps. It's not that Man of Steel BVS thing where it seems like she's his entire world and the only reason he protects anybody on Earth.
yeah. It's
But
not
like
like she trips, falls down the stairs, breaks her neck, and he lasers everybody.
it's this combination of things, right? Where it has to be the death of Bruce Wayne's parents for Superman. It has to be him finally going through this devastating thing that he would never be able to get over. And so it's that combination where it's Lois pregnant, it's him thinking he's looking at Doomsday, so that you would buy a situation where still altruistic Superman would think he had to kill someone. Um, so like whoever came up with that original idea, I think that's you need something that extreme.
Yeah, yeah, because it's everything. He loses his like soon-to-be child, he loses his wife and his entire city. Like everything's gone, and the only thing he has left are his parents, which he like locks away in the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah, which was a wonderful plot point. I really liked that idea.
Mhm.
Um, partly in, paralleling with Batman, because Batman understands where he's coming from. That's what's so fascinating about their relationship in this, is that it seems like Batman has to take Superman's place because he's the only person who really fully understands what Superman is doing and why, because he knows that he has that potentially in himself too if he were to be pushed too far, and if he had the powers of Superman. He knows that Superman just experienced the same thing that he did with the death of his parents. And so when Superman locks his parents away in the Fortress of Solitude, and you have that moment where Batman goes there, and Superman thinks that that Batman and his team have gone there for his parents, Batman's like, we have to get the heck out of here as fast as possible, because I mean, he doesn't say this, but you know what it is. I know what I would do if my parents were alive, and I thought, like he just understands how Superman got to that place, because it's all about, his parents' safety and the death of his parents and all of that.
Yeah, no, I was going to mention that scene too, because that scene's great, where they're breaking into the fortress to steal the pill, the magic super fighting pill, and then they find his parents. And Batman's just like, "No, we have to leave. Like, forget this mission. We need to go right now." Yeah, it's very good.
Um, I think maybe my favorite moment in the whole book is when uh, Clark's um, human parents are talking to Jor-El.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's such a great bit, where they're basically apologizing to each other for what Superman has turned into. Where they're like, where his, the Kents are like, I'm sorry we couldn't do more to, raise him right and make sure this didn't happen. And of course, like, they did raise him right. And then Jor-El says, I'm sorry that that I brought this wrath upon you. It's great.
Yeah, no, that seems really good. Yeah.
And I don't know, like, in one way it's really sad and tragic, and again, in another way, I get this like weird perverse pleasure reading that kind of thing, because it's just it's so like out there and wrong, and like I'm reading it almost on this, like, I don't know, horror movie level, where you're enjoying bad things, seeing bad things happening to people, and getting this perverse pleasure out of it, and going like, this shouldn't be fun, but it is.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I think it's because it's not in main continuity. Like, it works because it's this, again, sort of pseudo what if scenario. You can enjoy it on that level, because you know that you're not seeing your favorite characters actually ruined. We're not. It's not the DCEU thing where it's like, this is supposed to be the definitive take of these on these characters. Oh, really? Because A, I'm not buying it, and B, I don't want that. So, like, you've completely lost me. But this is, we make, maybe I said this earlier, we make evil Superman the exception to his own rule. It's like, Superman works because he's not this guy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And in the moments where they get to do like actual Superman, like they really work. Like you mentioned that like little side issue where he helps the kid out, and it's just like a really good Superman issue.
And I love the placement of it, because it's just before Superman is going to be totally far gone. I can't remember if it's before or after he burns Martian Manhunter alive.
I think it's before. I think so.
And then a little ways after that, he will finally, straight up kill someone.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, there's really good just like hero issues like that. Like the Flash one is really good too. Which you also mentioned, where he's running down the road thinking about like this person that Superman crippled, that was like this like giant fan of the superheroes who just wanted to be one of them.
Yeah.
Hmm. A lot of just like good. Like he understands why people like these characters, except for Wonder Woman. But
That's a tough nut to crack, though. I mean, it's totally understandable why he's having a hard time with that character.
mhm. No, definitely.
I resisted Flash staying on the side that he stays on all the way through this.
I definitely had
I,
that.
I question that. I'm not sure he wouldn't have gone to Batman, you know, if not a lot earlier. Like, and I mean, by the end of this, he's still on Superman's side. I'm not buying that.
Yeah, and I think throughout the book, because there's like talk about like Batman has ins on Superman's team, so there was just different things from like I don't know if I should like give it for it right now,
Oh,
like if that's
that's
gonna come back.
true. Yeah, because they
But then
never.
it ends up being Martian Manhunter, so it's not that.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was just thinking back on this and trying to remember. Like, were
Hmm.
they saying that Martian Manhunter was the mole, or there was another one?
No, it was Martian Manhunter.
Oh,
Unless
okay.
there's gonna be like a thing later, I don't know.
I
Uh,
would be really surprised though, because we get in Flash's head too often for that to be concealed for us. I think, or from
yeah,
us.
exactly. Yeah, because I wondered if it could be Flash at first and Lex, because I know in the game, Lex like helps Batman out, but obviously that'll come later.
Yeah, but I would think that would be a turn before it would be like it was a double cross all the way through, or a planned
Hmm.
double cross.
Yeah, no, for sure.
How do you feel about some of the choices of sides people take? Like we're both not sure about the Flash one. What do you think about Damian?
Damien makes sense to me, because it's like he's like a younger Damien. Like you said, it's after or it's before like a lot of the stuff that we've done with him, and like before Superman's son came to be.
Where
Uh,
he's kind of mellowed out
yeah,
as he gets older.
exactly. Yeah, he's still like the Dark Robin and, this kid raised by the League of Assassins. So the fact that he's like, yeah, we should be murdering these characters, makes sense to me. I don't know, did you like have issues with that?
A little bit initially, because I think I forgot just how uh, anti Batman's philosophy he is early on, and I shouldn't have forgotten that because I think that's a lot of why I never cared for that character.
Hmm.
He's matured and grown quite a bit over the years, so like I'm still I don't think of myself as a Damien fan, but I'm not like repelled by him every time he's on a panel anymore because he was just so insufferable for the longest time. Um, but yeah, I guess I did find myself just wondering how he even continued to operate with Batman for as long as he did if he was that against his like basic philosophies.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
I guess
Like,
that
I
was the
guess,
thing I resisted about it.
no, I mean, that's definitely fair. Like, you would think that he would have spoken up about it before then. But I guess just it's like that Wonder Woman thing where he was waiting for that moment to be like, look, this is why it's okay. Like, let's do that. But at the same time, like, yeah, he probably would have said something before then.
Did you think that Nightwing's death was a little easy?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
thought that was pretty contrived.
Yeah, Nightwing's death could have been handled a lot better.
When you kill superheroes off like that by what's more or less an accident, you have to wonder how that's not happening to more of them just going out fighting crime on a nightly basis.
Yeah, when he gets Million Dollar Baby, like, that's all I could think of when I saw that scene.
Yeah, that whole thing was a little easy. I was also worried that a lot more of that kind of thing would happen.
Hmm. Yeah, there's not as much just like, death and like, oh, we're killing characters every issue as much as I thought we would.
And there's not a lot of convenient stuff like that either.
Hmm.
Like just like
Yeah,
Deceased, it's a pretty tightly woven narrative, I think, for the most part. I mean, there's those off the beaten path side issue things, but most of those don't feel superfluous because it's world building. and also often character building. I think Taylor handles this like a big event that like a big cross book event that never happened. Like his attitude is let's make this another No Man's Land or something. And it's a lot like Arkham to me in that it could have been one of those, but it's just done in another format. I mean, this is still in comics, but it's one series as opposed to being in Detective and Batman and et cetera, et cetera. But part of the reason it reads to me like that is because the artists keep changing.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And then,
But I like the scope of it.
oh, absolutely, yeah. And I like that it's not just like, Superman kills Joker and then he goes to Arkham and just kills everybody there. Like it's part of that process. And that's also a scene that they completely retcon in Injustice 2. They go back to that scene and they like recreate it in the games. It's really
Oh,
weird.
really? I don't remember that.
Yeah, yeah, because in this book, it's Batman and Nightwing going to like stop Superman, and then obviously like Robin kills Nightwing in like the struggle, and in the game, it's Batman and Robin go together, and then it's like that's when Robin betrays Batman and is like I'm leaving, but Nightwing's not there at all. It's very weird.
Weird.
Hmm.
Did they do that? Well, no, because Nightwing was playable in the first game. I don't know what the point of that would be.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, I think there's one fight where you fight Nightwing in Injustice 2 where they just kind of like ported him over from the first game for one fight in the story.
Oh.
So it's even weirder, yeah.
Maybe what you were seeing was a just slightly alternate reality, which was it's the Injustice reality, but just off by like one notch.
Well, Batman's been punched in the head so many times he doesn't remember it super well. It's a little like fuzzy.
But I was talking about the narrative being tightly woven. There's a nice bookend with Batman and Superman in the Batcave. At the beginning, before close to the beginning, before Superman has totally lost himself, where Batman's kind of warning him of the dangers of the direction he's going. As is Alfred. One of the better lines in this, I think, is when he says when he calls him Master Kent. And the Superman says, "You don't have to call me master," and Alfred says, "Let's remember that." And then that's followed up on really nicely. Well, I say nicely. I mean, it's over the top, but it's followed up on pretty well at the end when he's the guy who takes the pill and then headbutts Superman. It's a little much. It was overly violent, but it's kind of a ridiculous panel, like in a vacuum. But I liked that issues and issues later he remembers that he did that and goes back to it. There's some really nice setup and payoff like that.
Yeah,
I say
exactly.
issues and issues. I guess in what you read it's only 12, but I'm thinking of it as like 32 issues later.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like a whole thing later. It's just like, it's a few issues later. Bring that back.
Did you think of this? There's a bit earlier in the middle when they're initially developing the pill, and some of the superheroes working with Superman um, have reservations because they're afraid that it's going to fall into the wrong hands. And Superman says, "Oh, don't worry, that won't happen." And he just moves on. He just forces the conversation. We're not talking about that. And of course, with where he's at, there's starting to be a lot of like don't ask questions. He's working above people, but doesn't even realize it. He is becoming too much of the god. And then toward the end, Batman has this whole coup where he breaks into the fortress and he steals it, and well, I guess it's Green Arrow that ultimately manages to steal it for Batman, and it did fall in the wrong hands. If you're Superman, Batman gets it, it does fall in the wrong hands. That's great.
Hmm. No, for sure. I also like I forget. I think it's around that point. Superman, and I mean he goes to Flash a few times, where they like have super speed conversations. But there's that point where they're playing chess, where Superman's trying to like prove why he's in the right, and like he just keeps beating Flash over and over, and the Flash is like, okay, but what about this? Checkmate. Okay, what about this? Checkmate. What about this? Checkmate. I really like that scene too.
Yeah, it's a great
That was
scene.
pretty good. Hmm.
Um, Oh, okay. So let's go back for just a second to the whole apocalypse thing because we mentioned Darkseid earlier, and I said let's put a pin in that.
Yep.
What am I missing? Because I said that there's not a lot of convenient stuff. The timing with that seemed convenient to me. Where I couldn't figure out, and again, tell me if I missed something. I couldn't figure out what the impetus was for Darkseid sending his minions right then to go after Superman, where he's like, Superman doesn't fight anymore. Like in the middle of everything he's doing, I didn't know what that was about. It's like they just didn't realize that he was, on the verge of building a regime, and so he's like, oh, let's go ahead and go conquer Earth now, and it seemed like it was really convenient timing just so that Superman would have like a bunch of aliens to kill so that he could make his speech about the ends justifying the means and that it's better to, protect your friends and kill your enemies, and that, like, well, if I have to kill a bunch of them in order to save my friends and my family, then it's okay. And then that escalation of, well, it was a bunch of aliens in a war scenario there, and then later on it's gonna be like with Martian Manhunter, it's self-defense, and then with the Green Arrow it's gonna be, oh, he just killed a guy, like it's all escalation. But was there any reason that it had to be right then that Apocalypse attacks Earth?
Yeah, so it's because Superman is like, oh, everybody, like, no more fighting. Like, we want peace here. This is my quest for peace. I'm ending all fighting. And then he stops all conflict, and then Darkseid is like, look at this. Superman loves peace now. Let's go invade. But it is a
Oh,
little strange because
I don't
he also
understand why
is,
that's the
like, taking
conclusion he
over.
would draw. Because Superman is forcing the he's Darkseid's not paying attention to everything that's going on then, because I don't see, because if he was, I don't see how you look at stuff like he takes Atlantis and puts it in the desert as he's done with conflict now. Like, yeah, he's creating peace, but how? And there's that
Yeah,
question through the whole book, like, he's creating peace, but at what horrible, twisty cost? But with Darkseid, it should be, well, he's creating peace, but who's gonna get killed along the way? And I can't remember if it's, who does he send? Is it Calabac or
it's
is it?
Calabac.
Yeah, and immediately when he gets there, Calabac's like, "Oh, you've got something different going on with your eyes. What are you doing, Superman?" He's like, "Quit coming at me, bro." And I was like, I don't know. Darkseid is a smarter tactician than this. I'm not buying that.
Darkseid did not see Superman fly straight through Solomon Grundy's chest.
Yeah, or even how he murdered Joker.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I get that we've got to illustrate like just how powerful Superman is and that he's losing himself and all of that, but those like full page spreads where he's going like totally through a person, a little much.
And they made sure to shove that Solomon Grundy, like flying through that chest, in the trailer for the movie.
I forgot
They're
about that.
like,
Yeah, they did.
don't worry, that stuff's gonna be there.
And I guess we do that real early so that we can see the brutality that Superman is starting to be willing to go with. But he's not a murderer yet because
Mhm.
Solomon Grundy can come back from anything.
Well, and then with that, like with
The
the
order of some of
violence,
that itself might be a little convenient now that I'm thinking about it. Like, it's not a big deal, but just that he
mhm.
keeps getting in these situations where conveniently the escalation is such where you can't really call it murder arguably until you get to Green Arrow.
Yeah. Well, and then it's also like with the violence, it's a case of like is it just because, it's the Mortal Kombat people? Like those games aren't rated T or aren't rated M, sorry, they are rated T.
Okay.
Um, because they don't have the same violence level, but these do, and we even get the fatality
I guess I
line.
forgot that. I guess in my head they've always been M, but I guess they're not. Because they're not, yeah, they're not as rough as anything like as rough as Mortal Kombat. You don't have like spines being ripped out and stuff. I'm
Mhm.
glad they made that compromise because even if you're gonna do darker versions of these characters and it's gonna be like I said earlier that kind of mirror universe thing where some of the novelty is supposed to be like your favorite superheroes but they're bad now. It's still those characters, so it's nice that they don't take it too far
Well,
in
yeah,
the
and I
games at
think
least.
that's always why they didn't include, like fatalities. Because the Mortal Kombat versus DC ran into that issue too, where it's like, okay, but what is Batman's fatality? Like, even in this world where Superman's evil, like, what do you do for that? Like, you can't, he's not gonna kill them.
So, well, Superman he's gonna fly through people and make a big hole every time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. See, I wonder if that's maybe in this book why they go more graphic. Like you have the big shot of him putting his hand through the Joker's body and it's like, blood. Like even in the games, when they show that scene, he like walks up to him and he moves his hand and it cuts away. Like you don't actually see that. But I just wonder if it's that like, oh, well, it's Mortal Kombat. Like people are gonna wanna see some of that in this book.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of weird that we're inconsistent about the violence level between the two things. But yeah, it's got to be just they know that the audience that's going to read this is more of that brutal Mortal Kombat audience, I guess.
Hmm.
It feels like there are, and I don't know if this is true, but it feels like there's maybe kind of some mandates. Because I don't see, as thoughtful as Taylor is with the Superman stuff, and as much as he clearly gets and loves that character, um, I don't see him going, let's make sure that it's as like rough and tumble as possible.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes
That
sense.
seems like
Because
an editorial choice to me.
yeah, even thinking back to Deceased, because I don't even think that's as violent
There
in
are a couple of
places.
places where it's
In
pretty,
places, yeah, but it's not like super like a graphic book. From what I remember, it's been weeks, so like I
yeah,
could go back to that and be like, what am I talking about?
it's the most violent thing I've read this year.
Exactly, it's the most horrific thing I've seen ever.
Well, and of course
Yeah.
that immediately feels less horrific because a lot of the violence is on zombies.
Hmm.
They're already deceased, corpses. They're deceased, Austin.
Oh, that's what that title meant.
Yeah, the,
Just
the
clicked.
the periods after D and C threw you off.
Exactly. I was like, what is this
It's
DC
it's
cyst?
what we in the field call like double entendre, Austin.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that means, but I'll go with it.
We danced around this a little bit, but one of the big things I wanted to praise this for is just how economical it is. Like partly, you know, I was talking earlier about how it gets a ton done overall. Like there's a lot of really good like world building stuff, and I like the I like the side issues and spending some time developing characters. But I also really appreciate how good Tom Taylor is at telling a complete story. A lot of them again are those interludes in not just 20 or 21 comic pages, but like 9 uh, because of that digital format again. I would love to see this guy work in animation and do episodes for cartoon shows. Uh, and I'd also like to see him, and I don't know if he's done any of this, do some all ages books because a lot of those, have to be single one and done issues that don't necessarily build on each other too much. And I think he would be fantastic for it.
Yeah, definitely. He gets a lot done, and it also just reads super fast. Like, a week ago when you were like, let's do this, and I saw it, I'm like, oh, 400 pages. Like, I might have to like kind of stretch a little bit to
And I
get
told
through
you,
that,
like,
but it
don't
should be.
worry, it reads really fast. I mean, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Part of it's because he's not wordy. I
Hmm.
mean, he's like the antithesis of a Scott Snyder. He's not wordy.
Yeah, you never turn the page and it's like the Spawn talking heads where there's like just paragraphs of dialogue.
And you're like, God, I better go make myself a sandwich so that I'm not famished by the end of reading this page.
Yeah, reading the news.
Um, but yeah, so I mean that's part of why it reads like that. But again, I also think some of that with both this and DC is just the novel nature of the whole thing, where it just stays like really entertaining and engaging and fun throughout. It was not at all a chore to read this, and I hope the rest of it's like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, I've always heard good things about the Injustice book, so I have to imagine it probably stays pretty consistent throughout, but who knows? Yeah.
Like I think it has that quality um, of really good cartoon show like a '03 Ninja Turtles or like Green Lantern the animated series or something, where I just find myself at the end of an episode constantly wanting to watch the next. His cliffhangers are really good and all of that. So I'm excited that it's getting that movie, and that's of course part of the reason I wanted to do this now. Um, because I've always thought that this is the right material for that. And I've heard some people complain where it's like, well, it got a video game and that's got the story in the story mode. Like, what is the point of that movie? I'm like, it's not the same thing though.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I'm glad they're like ditching the game for the movie and just it looks like they're just adapting this first volume,
That's what it looks
which is
like. There's a
interesting.
part of me that wishes that movie was called Year One, so we had a sense that maybe we'll get some more. And I hope they
Well,
don't try to cram too much in that movie where they're selling it on the year one stuff, but they actually get to the end of five in that movie. I hope that doesn't happen.
they'll make four movies. This is Injustice, and then we'll get Gods, and then Among, and then Us, and then they'll like four, and then they'll do five, and then it'll be Injustice, Gods Among Us, and it'll all come around.
Oh, see, I thought the second movie would just be like a colon. It's like Injustice, and then the next movie's like a colon, and then it's
Oh,
got yeah, and
good.
that's how you get five.
See, we moved on to formatting of the movie.
I realize there's not actually a colon in that title, but you know
They can add one.
that's why they make the font huge in Injustice, so you know that it's not called Injustice Gods.
Yeah, well, then that's why they make Gods Among Us so small so they can easily take it out afterwards.
Another point I wanted to make is this, and it's easier to do this well when it's not in mainline continuity. So it's kind of not fair to compare these, and I'm kind of surprised this hasn't come up yet. But in a lot of ways, this reads like what Civil War should have been.
I mean, yeah, I Civil War sucks.
And like again, it's not fair because I think if Civil War is a Elseworlds or What If type story from the beginning, you can do anything you want to with it, and you can take a character like Iron Man and take him to a place that people might not buy with 616 because how's he going to come back from it? Like you obviously you can't tell this story in regular mainline continuity because now Superman's evil and I don't know how he's ever going to come back from this. So it's so like you're afforded all of those crazy different directions with this because you're doing like a it's essentially like a multiverse story, like a Earth 2 or Earth 3 or something. But
Yeah,
but I don't know. Like, I don't know if Civil War could have taken any lessons from this had it been a thing that happened first. But I just found myself constantly, I was reading this going, like, this is how you tell a story about a bunch of superheroes that have to pick sides and go up against each other.
yeah. And what helps too is there's like so much time to like build each character and whatnot. while Civil War, and I mean, it would have been better if it was in the Ultimate Universe like it was supposed to be, anyways, but it's also like when you read Civil War, just that book, it's like just not a story. That was my biggest surprise when I got it. Where it's 6 issues and you're jumping around constantly. Like it's more of like just a series of jot notes of what the story is supposed to be, and you don't have anything that fills that in. So
Yeah,
you get like,
all the supplemental material is really it's sort of like Flashpoint but worse than that.
oh really? I've never
Yeah,
read Flashpoint.
because Flashpoint reads okay when you just read the mini, but there's a lot of uh like world building that's pretty fundamental to that whole thing. That like those extra books are not extra books, particularly the Atlantis stuff and the Batman stuff. But
Oh,
Civil
okay.
War is even worse because I think like all that side stuff is kind of necessary to fill the blanks in.
No, one of the best things, like that I think about with Civil War is there's a part where they kill off Bill Foster and they're at his funeral, and one character goes, "Hey, like Peter Parker looks weird over there. What's he doing?" And then the next time you see him, he's beating up Iron Man in his apartment. Like there's just nothing that connects that. It's just okay. That was his character arc. Somebody looked at him, went, "He looks weird over there. What's he planning?"
I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I'm giving Civil War a little bit too much credit in saying that like that's harder to do because it's 616. Because like, the movie version's a lot better, and we didn't have to ruin Iron Man to do that. And it's not the same sort of story in that you didn't have to turn Iron Man into a evil dictator or anything. But it is it is still just easier to tell this kind of story when you don't have to put all the toys back in the box at the end.
Yeah, no, the reason why the movie works is because that concept itself is fine. Like, there's nothing like inherently wrong with that concept. It's just that book's not a story. Like, it's, and at the end we have to get back to the way things were. I mean, obviously the status quo is different at the end of that book, but it's still got to be the Marvel universe at the end of the day.
And getting back to this, because you just made me think of this, even though this book can go anywhere it wants to because it's not tied to anything except for, I guess, some restrictions with story points in the game.
Yeah, you just can't kill like the 20 characters that are in that game.
I did find myself um, a little surprised when Batman does indeed get his secret identity outed. I
Yeah,
didn't think at that point in the book it would go that far because he manages to shut down, uh, all of the broadcasts as Superman's trying to out him. And then you've got that great bit where I can't remember who it is, but somebody says to Lex Luthor and Cyborg, like, how in the world can't you two figure out a way to get 4 words on the internet? And then Twitter lights up with Batman as Bruce Wayne, and that was like a really cool, satisfying moment.
hmm yeah, no, I definitely wasn't expecting that to happen in this book. At least not yet. Like, obviously, at some point that would have to happen.
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier that Batman's got a struggle on his hands here.
Yeah, like
He's got to fight for everything.
he EMPs the Watchtower just to buy himself like an extra 20 minutes.
And I also like that he's obviously made more sympathetic, and it's easier to root for him because he's got those hurdles to jump over. But he's not made like super self righteous and sanctimonious, and the book's not telling you that he is perfect now because Superman's gone bad. Like he's sort of trying to fill Superman's shoes, but again, the reason that all of that works is because he understands better than anyone how Superman could become what he becomes, and he's made a lot of mistakes. I would argue that he's made some mistakes that make it easier for Superman to do what he's doing. Even
hmm Yeah, I can see that.
And you've
Uh,
also, like it's fun because he's got that like Tower of Babel thing, of course, where he's got a contingency for everybody, and I like that he like uploaded a virus to Cyborg like the first week that he met him. So if anything ever went wrong, you just press a button.
I
And
love how specifically the button to shut down Cyborg is like just on his utility belt, presumably at all times. And not only that, but it's like one of like the main ones, like right in the center.
I always assume that there's just a thing that automatically can reprogram all of that.
That's amazing.
I didn't notice that it was one of the main buttons. That's pretty great.
Yeah, because when it happened, I was like, oh, like clearly, Batman hacked into him. He pressed that button and hacked Cyborg. Not that's the button he presses that releases the virus.
But yeah, I mean, Batman is trying to stop Superman, obviously with some of the same methods that Superman's using while simultaneously trying to prove that he's he's gone too far and he's going to try to take over the world because of the way he's abusing power and accepting too much power, and like Batman's having to use a lot of those same methods. And so he's a he does stuff like he kidnaps Hot Girl and sends Martian Manhunter into the Watchtower, pretending to be her, and again all the contingencies he has for the other heroes that he's using periodically. Like it's some of the same tactics that Superman's using now, and so uh, he's obviously being hypocritical, but like he knows he is, and that's the whole point. Is it's like, see, if I'm willing to do these things, Superman, as far as gone as he is now, what's he gonna do? And there's of course that question of just where the line is of the things that are like necessary evils versus the things that will fully corrupt you. So I guess ultimately the point I'm trying to make is it's just really nice that Batman's not put on a pedestal and turned into like a Jesus figure.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Like he's still Batman. He's still got all the flaws Batman has. It's just Superman now has embraced some of those flaws himself, and it's way scarier when it's Superman. Like you have to imagine Batman. Not only like with Superman's powers, gets pushed to the place that he is, but like immediately after Batman's parents died. Like, what if Batman was like 12 years old, his parents died, and he has the powers of Superman? Like, what would he have done? And I think that's the point of that scene where his parents are saying that he's a scared child, and that bit where they say like aren't deep down like aren't we all?
hmm Yeah, and that scene's really good too. That scene with Lex and the Kents. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, and you get just with Batman, like the other heroes kind of react to the things that he's doing, and they're like, "Oh my God, like this guy's a villain."
Which
Even
is
Killer
why I'm not
Croc.
sure if I buy Flash.
Yeah,
Staying with him
yeah,
as long as he does.
it's definitely questionable. It's going to be interesting to see how that moves forward. If how he's able to win Flash over, because he's kind of stuck with like the Flash has to be with Superman by the end of this.
Well,
And
and of course, he more and more he's ruling through fear. So you're going to get to a place where a lot of people are going to stick with him just because they don't feel like they have a choice.
hmm yeah, exactly. Which I'm assuming is what's going to happen with Aquaman. I mean, like kind of already has, but he's not
Yeah,
as.
he's gotten strong armed real hard with
hmm
Aquaman, but people are going to start, wondering who's the next Green Arrow,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that's a situation where where Superman tries to justify it like, well, he well, actually, he doesn't even get a chance really to say anything. But you can tell that what he would probably say is, "Well, Green Arrow, tried to, kill my parents or one of my parents, when obviously it was an accident." And so that's a situation of what it really is he's starting to see himself as superior, and it's you defied me. And I don't even think he quite realizes that in that moment. But there's a great speech early on that Batman has, I think, about how once you start justifying things, once you justify, that first kill or whatever it is, it becomes easier and easier to justify anything that you do.
Hmm.
And so we see all of that play out. Like, a lot of the ideas in this book are certainly spelled out for the audience, but I appreciate that it's always from the perspective of a character who's like putting things together, and it rarely reads like the book telling me what I'm supposed to think. There's maybe a couple of places where that happens, particularly with like political ideas. There's a somewhat cringeworthy Catwoman speech at one point where she's telling the president like all of the policies that like all the things that he needs to make policy on, and you can tell exactly what her politics are. And I can't tell if the book is just assuming that like everybody reading it will agree with this, or if it's just her philosophy. I'm kind of on the fence about it. For the most part, I don't think the book does that.
Hmm. Well, and then with that specifically, then Marvel took that speech, took out the policy part, and then made it their final speech of their Captain America show.
Yeah, that is true. I just thought I'm bouncing around. I thought that whole thing was really weird because what I and it's Catwoman and Batman are both uh like going to the president and saying like you need to do better, you need to be a better leader. I like the crux of what they're saying, that Superman, like people are siding with Superman, and he's going to be able to basically create a Nazi regime in America because people have lost faith in their leaders and their government. You've become too apathetic, and you don't have their best interests at heart. There's a lot of stuff and again, some of it seems a little heavy-handed, but there's a lot of stuff in here about like politicians that are just working for corporate interests, and the real bad guys are the evil faceless corporations and all of that stuff. And it's weird that they're that bat and I don't know. I don't want to get too political, but I would have appreciated seeing both sides of this. I just think it's weird that you have characters like Batman and Catwoman go to the president and say, basically, you need to have stronger policies and like make uh, you know more rules and harsher rules to help people, at the same time as you're saying we're worried that Superman is abusing his power. I don't know if you had that thought, but I just thought that was kind of that was a little weird. Like you're basically saying,
I did not have that thought, but the second you said it, it was like, oh my God.
am I wrong though? I mean, you're basically saying like we don't want Superman to take over the world, but the government's not big enough.
Yeah, no, that is pretty funny.
I don't know. And I'm not
Yeah.
trying to make a political statement myself saying that, because I know some folks are going to watch this and be like, oh, Cap's like, uh, really super right wing or whatever. I'm not trying to make any kind of political statement. I'm just saying like it's those seem like potentially contradictory terms. Maybe they're not, but it's just weird that both sides of that aren't discussed, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I don't know, it's weird in a way seeing kind of Batman deal with politicians in that sense. I don't know, especially because obviously you get Catwoman kind of spelling out everything, and I mean either way, Batman's gonna kind of do his silent routine. But it's also just kind of weird to like give political leanings to Batman, I think, because the scene definitely plays that way.
Yeah, I
And
think
I
it
don't
does.
know. Oh, it definitely does.
Now, don't get me
And it's
wrong.
just,
Those are the political leanings Catwoman would have. I don't even
mhm.
really have a problem with some of the stuff she's saying, except I can't tell if the book itself is saying is like making a case for that stuff, or if it's just that character in that scene.
Yeah, just in the moment, it feels like he kind of hammers the nail in a little too far.
That's all I'm saying.
hmm Absolutely. I mean, that's just the thing with writing. Sometimes you go a little too far.
And also, we know that that's a corrupt president, so they can't really trust him anyway. I mean, he basically comes out and says he is. And I like this bit. There's a well, and also he's pretty underhanded because he uses Mirror Master to try to take down Superman and then pretends like he had nothing to do with it. And then there's a bit, I think it might even be the scene where it's revealed that he's behind all of that, where he says like it's it's important to remember that power corrupts and this will happen to Superman. I should know. Like he's been corrupted by all of this himself. He knows that, he admits it, and then Catwoman's like try harder, and Batman's with her on it, and I'm like, this guy's heart's not in the right place. I mean, like maybe deep down it sort of is, but like he doesn't have people's best interests at heart.
We need to do better, everybody. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Or at least you
Yeah,
can't
he's too far
trust that he
gone.
does.
I think it's interesting though, like earlier I mentioned the kind of Dark Knight Returns thing. I don't know how intentional it is,
Yeah.
but I do think it's kind of interesting that you kind of swap Batman and Superman. Not exactly, but like kind of in that way where Batman's the one working for the government
Oh,
or
good
like
call.
working with the government, and then Superman's the one that's going too far. Like obviously it's not to the same degree. Um,
No, because Batman's not taking orders.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's not, yeah, and Batman's not taking over the world in Dark Knight Returns, just Gotham.
And Superman, yeah, and Superman's not trying to take him down because he is working with the government either.
hmm Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's, both like the kind of government and that hero are kind of going after the one that's going too far. It's a small thing. I don't know how intentional that is exactly. But especially because, like I said, when they have their big confrontation, he's definitely looking at that book. Because you get like just dialogue basically lifted from it.
Well, and I mean, when you get that scenario, how do you not? I mean, it's kind of expected. It's sort of an obligatory thing. Like you're going to go
hmm
back to that to some degree.
No, it's nice that he like reverses it the way
Yeah.
he does, so it doesn't feel like it's just that same moment again. Like I'm really glad we didn't have to have like Batman put on the metal suit and beat up Superman for like fan servicey reasons, and then Superman gets to like walk away.
No, it's really. I mean, the big subversion there is I'm not going to fight you.
hmm But Alfred is.
Yes.
That's what he should have said.
Well, we've been talking about this forever. What else do you want to make sure that we hit?
Um, let's see. Do I have anything else? You did mention the Mirror Master thing. That is probably one of the biggest, like, oh, this character's just here because of the game thing, where like Raven comes out of nowhere and like
Yes.
grabs him. It's like, oh yeah, that's a playable character. We gotta put them in some way.
But I mean, we don't see everybody. I assume by the end of this we will.
hmm
Although most everybody's there already. You don't have Killer Frost yet.
Oh no, I think we see her. I think I just passed a panel where you
Oh,
see
really?
her. Oh, you know what? It might have been, maybe not though. Because they're like attacking the rogues. But now that I think about it, I think it was Captain Cold that I saw. Um,
I still have not figured out how to play with him.
oh, Captain Cold. I don't think
Yeah,
I've ever played as Captain Cold.
Uh,
Maybe once.
he's in two, right?
Yep.
He's got his like special circle button thing is like charging up his gun, and like I cannot figure out how to do that right, and I can't get excited about having to learn either. I don't care about Captain Cold, but like
No, and that's a place too where, I mean, both of those games have it where they're looking at things that are popular in DC around the time
right
that they
then
come
in
out.
that moment, like
Yep.
if we get an Injustice 3, I don't think anything is going to happen because of Arrowverse.
No, I don't think so either. But you'll get characters like King Shark in it because of the
Because of
Suicide
the
Squad.
Suicide Squad.
In Injustice 2 already is like really looking at that first Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but I guess it is. But yeah, like the first Injustice really heavily looking at Arrow and stuff, and then that second game is doing more of it, but I'm not sure if
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it's doing as much. It's the only reason Killer Frost is in that first game.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with like that's the only reason that Deadshot's in 2, I think. Is because Suicide Squad had just come out.
Oh, speaking of, I talked to you about this off camera, but why does it have to be Starling City? Just because they changed the name of that in the TV show? That is obnoxious.
Because the only people who will read this are people who only know Arrow. So
Oh, stop it. Starling City. And then the joke is on this book because then the TV show itself feels the need to change it later. It's like, oh, you mean we could have just done straight up comic stuff the whole time? Yeah, you could have. Why don't you just embrace the material? Oh, it didn't have to be a Batman show? No, it probably, well, maybe it got popular because it was a Batman show. It's really hard to say if Oliver Queen in that show was characterized more like he is here, if that show is popular, or if it had to be the overly dark and broody for almost no good reason.
yeah, it's hard to say because that's like right in that midpoint, right? Because like that is right after Avengers comes out.
Yeah.
So like yeah, probably it would have done well, but I don't know if it would have been as big as it was.
So we're running away with ourselves here, but I gotta ask you this because I've never had this thought before. Is it bizarre and ironic, or am I reaching too much by suggesting this? That what you basically have with Arrow is uh, a show that wants to be a Batman show because the Nolan trilogy was so popular, right? And it's just after Rises has come out, and so they turn Oliver Queen sort of kind of into Bruce Wayne, and the whole thing has the same brooding qualities as Batman, and it's sort of the same thing as the ways in which the 1990 Flash show was 89 Batman, except that show doesn't end up staying on the air and gets canceled, and Arrow turns into a whole multiverse that
And then
ultimately
brings that
includes
Flash back.
1990s Flash.
Oh my God, what show will the Matt Reeves Batman like unleash on us that is just that movie but with a different DC character? That's what I want to know.
They'll finally make that live action Blue Beetle show, and it'll just be another Batman show, but with Ted Kord.
I want the Blue Beetle scene where like a thug walks up to him and he snaps the guy's arm and just punches him like Daredevil. Yes, I'm all DC. If you're watching this, make this show, please. I think they're already making a Blue Beetle show, so like,
Oh, really? Because that was supposed to happen like 10 years ago.
it's either a show or a movie. There is like a Blue Beetle thing in development because they cast the actor for it.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard about that.
There's
Is
like
it?
100 random DC things that are in development.
Should I just assume it's Jaime and not Ted Kord?
I think so.
That's what I would figure we would
Of
do
course, yeah.
at this point with that. Yeah. And to be
Yeah,
fair, I mean, these days Jaime gets used a lot more than Ted Kord anyway. I think because
he's in Injustice too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And well, and he was in Young Justice.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I've only seen part of that show, so I don't know it super well.
I don't know it real well either, but I've watched through the first two seasons, and God, that first season is one of the coolest things that ever happened. Um,
Oh,
but
it's great.
yeah, I hadn't heard that. But there's so much stuff in development all the time.
Yeah, the other day I was on a call with like some people on the Patreon Discord, and one of them was like, "Oh, like the one thing I like about DC right now is, we could be getting some good stuff, and we're not doing 4 movies a year like Marvel." And I was like, next year we got 4 DC movies coming out. So, no, we're there.
I mean, some of that might be because of COVID,
No, no, for sure. It's just funny, like the
because
specific number.
originally the Batman was supposed to come out this year,
Mhm.
although with some of the stuff we've heard about behind the scenes, I think that still could have gotten pushed back to 2022 regardless of COVID. But
Yeah, I'm not sure because I don't know how much of that's just kind of like tabloid stuff or like
I don't,
what's
to
going
be
on with
honest with
that.
you, I don't either. Yeah. And that's why I
Some
haven't
of it's
engaged in a
really
lot of
funny.
speculation with that. It's like how much of that was just, the set getting shut down because of COVID scares, and how much of it is like actually any kind of turmoil or anything. I don't know.
I think because Warner Brothers like keeps announcing spin-offs for that, I have to imagine they're probably pretty happy with it. So like it's probably in good hands.
They've learned
See.
no lessons from any of their history in the past with that,
Nope.
but whatever. They just love announcing things.
I can't believe we're getting a Penguin show.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that, really?
Yeah, they're spinning off the Penguin from that movie into his own show, which they described as being a Scarface-like TV show about the rise of the Penguin.
I mean, if you can have an Alfred show and anybody watched it, so it would stay on more than one season.
Well, and like it'll have like an actual actor because it's got like Colin Farrell. Like
Oh
it's
yeah, good call. So I mean, that's cool because I love Colin Farrell. I forgot he was playing. I can't keep up with all this stuff anymore.
When I think Matt Reeves is like connected to all, like he's like involved, at least somewhat. I don't know. It's all crazy.
That movie better win over 80% of its audience, or you're in trouble. If that's a Man of Steel situation, we're right back to where we were 9 years ago.
hmm Yeah, exactly. And yeah, they'll just throw in Superman for the sequel if it's mixed.
Well, how? I mean, how would that help?
Because just throw things at the wall. Just keep doing it.
Oh, see, yeah, I guess I'm assuming that they've learned anything. I shouldn't assume that. Well, for a second, I was like, yeah, no, just because of the BVS thing, where it's like, well, I know, we'll just put in the other but I mean, their Superman was never popular.
Even in that movie, they were like, yeah, Superman, Batman was pretty good in this movie. I don't like him running around like the Punisher, but the actor was good.
I like how even folks that love BVS, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say Snyder managed the thing that he said he was going to do. He made Superman cool finally. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that. Even people that don't like Superman that much.
hmm That's because like the Superman sucks.
Poor Henry Cavill.
Yeah, that's okay. He can do other stuff.
Well, guys, we'll be back in the not too distant future to do the second year of this. I want to try to roll through these while this is somewhat fresh in my mind, if we can.
hmm
But I want to do as much Injustice content as I can before or just around when that movie comes out, because I'm really in the mood for this stuff now, and we've never tackled any of it, so we might as well, get a bunch of it knocked out. Um, and I might even do something on the game story at some point.
Yeah, we should do that. I played through those game stories like quite a few times. I know them pretty well. They're not brilliant, but they're all right. They're fun to play.
Well, anyway, thanks a lot for watching, folks. We sure appreciate it. We'll see you again next time. I was Captain Logan, and this was The Day Ghost!
That's right. And next time, I'm gonna break your goddamn back.
Just as long as I don't have to keep hearing about it before it happens.
Oh no, I will break your spirit first by saying that over and over.
Oh my god, why? And is it because you're the goddamn Batman? Is that why? Are you the
Exactly.
goddamn Backman? Is that what it is? Anyway,
I'm backgammon, back Batman. I don't know.
all right. Well, we've gone as far off the rails as humanly possible. We'll see you later, folks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.